Why do Catholics talk about the early church fathers so much? For me, it starts with how seriously I take the Bible. I believe scripture is inspired and authoritative, but that raises a real question. How did the apostles intend the faith to be preserved and understood? Because the New Testament doesn't present Christianity as something to be privately interpreted, as seen in 2 Peter 1:20. It presents a church with teaching, authority, and continuity. In 2 Thessalonians 2:15, Paul says, "Stand firm and hold fast to the traditions that were taught to you, either by spoken word or by our letter." So there are teachings passed on both orally and in writing. And in 2 Timothy 2 verse 2, Paul says, "What you have heard from me, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." That's a chain of teaching, generation to generation. In 1 Timothy 3:15, Paul calls the church the pillar and foundation of the truth. That means that truth isn't just floating in private interpretation. It is anchored in a visible church. And the book of Hebrews reinforces this idea in things like remember your leaders in Hebrews 13:7 and obey your leaders and submit to them in Hebrews 13:17. So the pattern is apostolic teaching passed on through leaders within a structured church. That is exactly what we see in the earliest Christians after the apostles. Clement of Rome, writing around 96 AD, describes the apostles appointing bishops and ensuring succession so the teaching continues after them. And Irenaeus of Lyon, who was a disciple of Polycarp, who was a disciple of the apostle John, later says, you can trace bishops in the churches back to the apostles themselves. And he appeals to that continuity as proof of true faith. So here's the connection I see. If scripture presents a church with authority and continuity, and the earliest Christians right after the apostles described that same structure continuing, then Christianity was never meant to be divided into different interpretations. It was meant to remain one visible, unified church rooted in the apostles. That's why Catholics identify the Catholic Church as the continuation of that early church. Not because it's one denomination among many, but because historically and structurally, it claims to be the same church that Jesus Christ founded and that the early church described as continuous. So I don't look at the early church fathers as an optional add-on to Christianity. I look at them as evidence of what the church looked like before later divisions. And that's why Catholics believe the church Christ founded is still visible, still continuous, and still identifiable today.